I have been covertly drugged for quite some time, and still they cannot beat me. They know that if they accept, I will sober up and go way out of my way to eat food and to drink things that couldn't be drugged or that are very unlikely to be drugged. And then I will win. Government harassment is the biggest threat to freedom in contemporary society. The people who use the government to harass people and to make sure that they have the stage set to get away with harassing people have a long history of drug abuse. They're philosophers, Freud, Nietzsche. A lot of the people that they look up to, Plato, did drugs and tried to reach another level of consciousness and thinking in order to figure things out. And in the process, they found some drugs are performance-enhancing drugs and some are performance-reducing. And there have been people whose philosophy allows for them to cheat around for quite some time. And in order for society to break free, they need to stop adopting their philosophies of trickery and paganism and atheism and other morally bankrupt philosophies and ways of thinking. So these people historically have used cults to drug people. They've used cartels and human trafficking and gotten, people get prostitutes addicted to drugs. So there's a long history of drug use and cults and criminals. The people who like to harass people include the people who do these things. They also like to sensitize you to certain things, colors and symbols, so they can harass you with them. We see it with the white sheets of the Ku Klux Klan. We see it with, the red, the powerful color of the red that it draws attention, being used by the Nazis. We see the symbols of the burning cross and the swastika. Okay, these things aren't new. These are ways to communicate ideas, and people are sensitized and desensitized to them for the purpose of social control and for the psychological effect that it will have on them in the long term, especially. These people like doing little, bitch shit historically since they're kids, like pester people and prank call them. They like to single people out for ritual abuse. If you think about sacrifices and other forms of ritual abuse, it tends to be a group of people conspiring to single one person out. And that's what you see with the countless complaints of people being targeted and the SRA quote-unquote scare, which when you do your research you see is real. We see it with the prison gangs. We'll get into that. So they like to operate in groups and make it socially normative within that group. These are people that like to cheat and trick and worship ideas and gods that have to do with treachery and cheating and tricking, mischief, like Pan and Loki. They like to threaten people. They like obscene sexual advances and sexual depravity. They like to dabble in science and philosophy and try to impress people with their knowledge, people who don't know as much as they do about these things, and try to get them, to be a captive audience in a political group, cult, secret society, private club, etc. So, when you had the breakup with the Catholic Church, there was a lot of sexual immorality. Luther wanted to leave partially because he wanted to marry a nun. Look it up. These people also like bloodshedding, gladiator-style fights, noise, and smear campaigns. Now, keep in mind, they use social media, websites. The proof is there. They have their own website, Stormfront, where they discuss occult symbolism, and there's white supremacists and white nationalists and so on there, separatists. There's, on social media, you see their groups. There's books written by them, mainstream history of cults, prison gangs, the history of psychological abuse, history of mind control, and covert drugging, such as Fred Hampton drugging the Kool-Aid, the cults drugging people. When I forgot the names of the cults, I'll put in the comments, but they drugged people to get them to commit quote unquote suicide or mass suicide. Um, and the drugs killed them in some instances. So they drugged them to make them more suggestible, and then they drugged them to kill them. Of course, you see this with eugenics and euthanasia and how drugs are tied into the history of these things. And the history of non-consensual experimentation and unethical experimentation. I've covered all these things in my videos in the past, in depth. But obviously I could have gone more in depth, but you can go on and on about these things, and I try to limit the scope of my videos to things that are relevant to the most important topics to me. So these are some of the more pertinent details and facts that I've gone over, and we get new we have a new understanding of life all the time. For example, some of the sea people, they used to think that their understanding of the Aegean was correct, but it turns out that the sea people were probably Philistines from the Levant, according to some of the new articles and findings that have been released by the press. So to make a long story short, I'm the top martial artist. They can't beat me. I have 15 witnesses. The number 15, it's really sticking with me. 15 hits in 1.2 to 1.4 seconds with sparring gloves on, Wilder boxing range, and so on. And so, when you move as fast as I do, and you can, really end a threat really fast, and you have tricks up your sleeves, and